Hey, what's up, guys? It's Phlox, and today I am back with the last Warlock guide for Season 1. Today we are going to be going over Destro, and similar to AF and Demo, I'm going to be going through stuff like stats, some talent builds for both Raid and M+, and then we'll be going through the rotations, and I'll be explaining all kinds of stuff in there. So we're going to jump right into the video now, guys. If you do enjoy the video, please make sure to subscribe, like the video, leave a comment down in the comment section. Let me know. Let me know if the video helped you out. Go follow my Twitch channel. If you are really enjoying the content and you want to consider supporting the channel a little bit more, I have YouTube memberships active, so you can go over there and join. It's only $5 a month, and you get access to some special perks. I'll also have the link to my community Discord server, where I will have all kinds of useful information posted. So if you are interested, go check that out as well. So we're going to jump right into the video right now. All right, boys, so the first thing we are going to get into is the stats as usual. As usual, to start out the season, you are going to want to be prioritizing item level on your gear over specific stats. So, as you are getting gear upgrades, you are basically just going to put them on. Doesn't matter what stats they have on them. And then as you get more gear and you start having gear pieces with similar item levels, at that point is when you're going to want to start comparing the stats between them and prioritizing for specific stats. So the stat you want to prioritize the most is haste. Haste is going to basically just make it so that you can build and spend your shards a lot faster on Destro, which is basically just Destro's main gameplay loop is building and spending shards. After haste, you're basically just gonna want to get a good mix of crit and mastery. Mastery is basically just a better versatility for Destro. Your mastery gives your spells increased damage plus an extra random amount of damage. And then crit is pretty decent. Crit has some interactions with Destro. The spec tree got a couple of new interactions with crit, mostly devastation and ruin. Soulfire also has some interaction with crit now, and this can be a very decent shard generator for you. With decimation, whenever your stuff crits, it has a chance to reset the cooldown of your Soulfire and make it cast really fast. So this is a decent soul shard generator for you, and this actually does a fair bit of damage as well. Crit also boosts your Chaos Bolt damage, and crit also helps your shard gen and AoE, since Immolate/Wither has a chance to generate more shards whenever it crits. Another thing to mention about crit is that it has a little bit more interaction with the Hellcaller tree thanks to a couple of these talents. This one right here gives your fire spells 10% more crit strike chance from all sources. This one right here gives your shadow spells 10% more crit strike chance from all sources. And this one causes your Wither to deal 10% increased critical strike damage. They also added something in the class tree, this expansion, which is this talent right here, which gives you 10% more crit strike stat from all sources. So crit, mastery, both pretty good. Just make sure you are constantly simming so you do not overstack one stat more than the other. And then versatility, it isn't really bad, it's just not as good as the other stats. And then the only other special thing to mention with versatility is if you are doing any type of really hard content or high key pushing, you do want to have like a little bit of versatility just because the extra little bit of DR that you get from versatility helps you to survive. So you don't want to just neglect this entirely. Alright guys, so now we are going to get into some talents. So we'll start out with the single target talent builds for Destro. Over on the class side of the tree, again, for something like Raid, you're mostly just interested in grabbing throughput, defensive options, and you definitely want to make sure you get all three of these capstones. They're all very useful. So it doesn't leave us with a lot of flex options, basically just maybe like Fiendish Stride or this one. You can swap between these two here based on like preference. Lifeblood is a decent option. Abyss Walker is a kind of a decent option, and I would say that's pretty much it. For the hero trees, this is the best simming hero tree for Hellcaller right now. The only throughput option is this one right here, and Bleak Heart is a little better. This is a defensive node. Both of these are pretty bad, so this is kind of just less bad than this one. And then this is a utility node. Aura of Enfeeblement is pretty much just useless right now, so you just take Curse of the Satyr. For Diabolist, this is the best simming tree for me. Again, this is the throughput node here, and this one is just simming better for me. This is a defensive node. Both of them kind of interact with Unending Resolve. This one I think is a little more useful because it gives you a max health shield kinda while you have Unending Resolve. So it's a little more useful in my opinion. And then this is a utility node. We don't really ever take Hollow Terror in PvE, so you kind of just take this one. Over on the spec side of the tree, this is basically what I found to be the highest simming single target build for me. Just in general, like CDF doesn't seem to be that good on single target. Rift is kind of a little undertuned right now. And then basically with that information, you just kind of take everything else more or less. You don't need Havoc on single target. And this tree would basically be the same for Diabolist and Hellcaller. And as far as sim numbers go, Diabolist is definitely simming a lot better than Hellcaller on single target, similar to like AF. Hellcaller is just a tree that gains like a lot of really good value in mass AoE, but as you get lower and lower to target counts, you just lose a lot of damage. So now we'll go over some Cleave style builds, and this is basically something you would play on a fight like Silken Court in the current raid. So for the Cleave style builds, like basically nothing changes in the class or the hero trees for both Hellcaller and Diabolist. You pretty much just play the same stuff. And over on the spec side of the tree, basically all you're going to want to do is just pick up Havoc so we can actually cleave. So we're basically just going to drop BTA and Diabolic Embers and then pick up Havoc. And Chaos Incarnate is just simming better for me on Cleave versus like either of these two options. Everything else is basically identical to the single target build. And then as far as in Cleave scenarios go, Hellcaller is simming very, very slightly better than Diabolist for me. Alright guys, so we're going to go over some M plus builds now. Basically, if I was going to be doing M plus on Destro, this is what I would be playing. So over on the class side of the tree, the only big pickup you want to make sure you get is Shadow Fury. You definitely want this for keys. This is our only AoE stop. Some other potentially useful stuff you could pick up is Amplify Curse if you need it for like specific dungeons, just to increase the cast time with Curse of Tongues. And then Banish could also be pretty useful if a boss strat requires you to CC an ad, and you could use Banish to do that. Hero trees, nothing changes, similar to single target and cleave. These are just always going to be the same. So over on the spec side of the tree, a couple things change. We drop all the Shadowburn stuff for CDF instead. Another big change is we drop Crashing Chaos for Reign of Chaos, just sims a little better in AoE. And then I'd say the other really big choice you have is just between Inferno and Cataclysm. Now for Hellcaller specifically, I think you could potentially swap between these two if you wanted to. Inferno is just always going to sim better in AoE over Kata. It's just going to give you way more damage. But I could see Kata being useful if you are consistently pulling really, really, really high target counts where it's hard to manage your dots. Just because Hellcaller is revolved around Wither, which is your dot. So I'm talking about like consistent, like maybe 10, 15 plus mob pulls where you can get really good value out of Kata. Think of a dungeon like Everbloom, for example, if you played at all in Dragonflight Season 3. Other than that, I think Inferno is just always going to be better. The only caveat with Inferno is you have to manually apply and manage your withers. So you have to be on top of that. You won't have Kata to do that. The good thing is that CDF gives you dot extension, so it makes it a little bit easier to keep all your dots applied. And then for Diabolus, the tree is basically the same. With Diabolus, Inferno is just always going to be better because your dot damage is a lot less important with this hero tree, so it's not really a need to ever play Cataclysm. And then basically we just swap out Ruin for Chaos Incarnate. This is simming better with Diabolist for whatever reason. But other than that, they are more or less identical, and they basically play the same. As far as which tree is simming better, Hellcaller is giving you a little bit more top-end AoE. The thing is that your single target with Hellcaller, like especially with this build, is going to be really, 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 really bad. Like I cannot stress that enough. Like really bad compared to Diabolist. So honestly, I don't think with current tuning, I don't think you could really ever justify playing Hellcaller as Destro because you are just going to lose way too much single target to justify getting a little bit more AoE. Like the AoE with Diabolus is still very, very solid, don't get me wrong. And with that, I'm mostly talking about like higher keys. If you're playing lower keys, it really doesn't matter which of these two hero trees you're playing. But definitely in higher keys, the extra single target from Diabolist is definitely going to make a difference. All right, boys, now that we have gone over talent builds, we will jump into rotational stuff. So we're going to start out on single target. The basic idea with Destro is you're just going to be constantly building and spending shards throughout the course of the fight. To build shards, you have stuff like Immolate, Conflag, Incinerate, your Infernal, Soulfire, and the Overfiend from the Spec tree. And to spend shards on single target, you are mostly going to be casting a bunch of Chaos Bolts. You will also be casting Shadowburn if you have all these Shadowburn talents when the target hits 30% health or less. Also, you can cast Shadowburn if you are capping at 5 shards and you don't have time to cast a Chaos Bolt. You can just send a Shadowburn so that you don't cap shards. Capping shards is one of the worst things you can do as Destro. A lot of your damage gets put into your shard spenders, so you do not want to sit capping at max shards for a prolonged period of time. Capping shards also prevents you from cycling through your Diabolist demons faster, prevents you from cycling through your Overfiends faster. So just in general, capping shards is very, very, very bad. And then the only other thing going on through all that is you have to manage a couple debuffs. Outside of your dot immolate, there are a couple debuffs you want to try and maintain, which are going to be this one right here, Roaring Blaze. So when I conflag, the target gets a debuff, which makes it take increased damage from immolate, incinerate, conflag, soulfire, and CDF. You want to try to maintain that debuff with as high uptime as possible. Basically, the way you do that is you'd space out your conflags. So if I had 2 conflags, I would just use it, wait until this timer gets low, and then wait to use it again, instead of just casting these back to back. And then the other debuff you want to maintain higher uptime on is Eradication. Now this one you don't really have to play around that much. You want to play around it a little bit, but it's really hard to like maximize this with like 100% uptime. And basically the way you would do that is similarly you would cast like a Chaos Bolt, cast like a couple Incinerates, wait a little bit, and then cast another Chaos Bolt instead of just casting your Chaos Bolts back to back like this. Now there are times where you're just going to be genning a lot of shards and you're going to need to start dumping shards fast. So in that case, you definitely want to prioritize dumping shards over trying to maximize eradication. But yeah, those are just the general basic ideas of Destro. So I'm going to go and do a single target rotation right now. I'll do a little demo and then we will go back into it a little bit slower and I can explain in a little more detail what I'm doing and what's going on. Alright guys, so now I'm going to do a quick single target rotation demonstration using Diabolist. I'm just going to show Diabolist. Hellcaller is a little bit simpler than Diabolist. Diabolist has like a couple procs within the tree based on the demons that you spawn. You'll basically be using these procs naturally throughout your rotation, and that's pretty much the only difference between Diabolist and Hellcaller. Alright guys, so now we will go back through that demonstration a little bit slower. So to start out, we're going to precast a Soulfire. This is going to give us a free shard before we pull, and apply Immolate on the target. We're going to follow that up with Kata just to put it on cooldown, into our cooldowns, which is Infernal, and our Trinket. After that, we are pretty much close to max shards, so I'm going to start dumping some Chaos Bolts. I got a Decimation proc, so I want to make sure I use that. Our Conflag got pretty close to capping on 2, so I use that right there. Throughout this whole process of dumping, especially when Infernal's up, I'm not really paying attention to Eradication at all. I'm just trying to make sure I don't cap shards, because during this period of time you are generating a lot of shards, and you just want to make sure you don't cap. The only other debuffs I'm really paying really close attention to are Immolate and Roaring Blaze. So I'm just going through and building and spending shards. So you basically kind of want to go into this cycle where you build till about like 4-ish shards, and then you start dumping with some Chaos Bolts till you go back down to like 1 or close to 0. Build again with Incinerate back up to like 4, and then rinse and repeat that process. So there I got a Ruination proc, we just used it. Keep dumping till I'm lower. Got a Decimation proc, so I want to use that. Cat is off CD, so I want to use that. Close to 5 shards, and I want to start dumping. I want to keep dumping. I want to keep dumping. I'm still genning a lot of shards. I want to keep on dumping. I got a Decimation proc, so I want to use that. This is a pretty good example of like, so right here I had a bunch of shards coming up, like, and as you play with Destro more and more, you'll get used to like knowing when you have an influx of shards coming, like now or in the near future. So like right here, I know I'm going to start genning an insane amount of shards, so I'm just going to do absolutely nothing else but keep dumping, because I really do not want to cap. That's why here I casted like 4 or 5 Chaos Bolts in a row, 6 Chaos Bolts in a row. I just had a lot of shards at that period of time. So now that's over, we're just going to go right back into just building with Incinerate, spending with Chaos Bolt, using my procs. I have an Infernal Bolt proc, I want to use this. I'm making sure to space out my conflags. Kata's off CD, I want to use that. Got another Decimation proc. It's pretty straightforward, more or less. You're basically just building and spending over and over. Keeping up these debuffs, using your procs. That's really it. Like at a very basic level. Now another thing to mention, because this dummy doesn't go below 30% health, I'm not really using Shadowburn that much. If you are talented into this, like I mentioned, you do want to use this when the target's below 30. So basically you would kind of treat this as like another conflag where you don't want to cap this out on 2 charges. You just want to have this consistently rolling, and using it as it comes up. And yes, you will prio using this over Chaos Bolt in Execute. So make sure you are using this. Another good use for this is if at any point in time you have to start moving and you can't plant and cast a Chaos Bolt, you can just use this as your shard spender. Doesn't matter what health the target's at. And you're doing that just to basically make sure that you can use shards and you don't cap. But yeah, we are just going back into the build and spend pretty much. Pretty straightforward. Destro, the big thing with Destro is like just getting a feel for the flow. After you play it for a while, you'll just get like a feel for how it flows naturally. And you get like a lot more used to muscle memory and stuff, and just, you know, going through it over and over. Alright guys, so now we will go into a demo for the cleave rotation. So the cleave rotation is very, very identical to the single target rotation. The only caveat is that you have Havoc now, which allows you to actually cleave onto a second target. But while you have Havoc on a second target, you are literally just going to be doing your single target rotation on one target, and it'll be copied over to the Havoc target. So I'm going to do a little demonstration with that, and then I will go through it a little bit slower and explain what's going on. Alright guys, so now I will go through the cleave demonstration a little bit slower. Basically, the biggest thing you guys are going to see on this rotation compared to like single target is that there are times where you're just going to have a very large influx of shards. So basically, the name of the game for Destro in like multi-target or as you get into higher target counts is very much just to make sure you do not waste any of your shards, do not cap shards, like literally do whatever you have to do to not cap shards. Be it drop a rain of fire, use like a shadow burn really quick. Just like sitting at 5 for multiple seconds at a time is going to lose you a lot of damage. And then the other big thing is just making sure you set up your Havoc windows properly. So every time you go into a Havoc window, you want to make sure you have a good amount of shards, like at least 3 or more, and at least 1 charge of Conflag. So those are kind of like the two really big main ideas for multi-target. So let's get into this. I'm going to start out with a Cataclysm just to get Immolate on both of these. I'm going to drop Infernal right after. We're going to go into our first Havoc window, so I'm going to immediately Havoc. I'm going to swap targets to Conflag. It's going to give me a good amount of extra shard frags, and it's also going to give me backdraft, so I can start casting a Chaos Bolt a little bit quicker. So the big thing with Destro also is as you get more and more haste, these Havoc windows become a lot more fluid and easier to do. You're able to fit a lot more Chaos Bolts within these Havoc windows as you get more haste. That's why haste is so valuable for Destro. So I'm going to swap targets, Conflag, and then I'm going to start trying to dump as many Chaos Bolts as possible while Havoc's still up. That is the most important thing I'm trying to do, is just get as many Chaos Bolts within Havoc as possible. I want to start leveraging all my Conflag charges. As you get Decimation procs, you definitely want to be using that with Havoc on. Soulfire does a good amount of damage, and if you use it on a Havoc target, you're going to get 2 whole shards for free, which is very massive. So I'm going to use that now. I got 2 shards back. See right here, if I had more haste, I would probably be able to fit this last Chaos Bolt into the Havoc, because Havoc's about to drop right now. So that's just kind of like a haste thing. So basically, when Havoc drops, all you're going to do is just default back to your single target rotation. Like just build and spend with Chaos Bolts. Keeping Roaring Blaze uptime as much as possible is not as important in multi-target. What you want to try to do is just pull your con flags for your Havoc windows. So don't try to just, use your con flags to keep Roaring Blaze up. Yeah, I'm just building and spending. I'm not full dumping. I'm trying to make sure I have some amount of shards for when Havoc comes up. I used a con flag there because I was about to cap 2. So again, you don't want to sit at 2 charges. It's pretty bad. Before I go into my Havoc window, I'm going to have to do a couple things like cast Cataclysm. I'm going to have to spend a GCD on Havoc. So while you're doing all that, you definitely want your con flag to still be recharging. I'm also going to choose to use my Decimation proc before I go into my Havoc window. So at this point, I'm kind of ready to go back into Havoc, so I'm going to Kata. I see my Infernal Bolt proc. I'm not going to use this yet. I have 17 seconds to use this, so there's no rush. So in this Havoc window, I did not con flag because I would have capped charges, so instead I'm just going to Havoc and then go right into a Chaos Bolt. I'm trying to dump because I have a lot of shards available to me right now, especially with Infernal Bolt available. So I'm just trying to get Chaos Bolts in with Havoc up. A lot of Chaos Bolts. Now that I'm basically out, now I choose to cast Infernal Bolt. And then Ruination, and then I got a Decimation proc after that. Back into the regular single target rotation, just building and spending. Havoc is about to come up again, so I'm basically going to Kata right now. Into Havoc, we're going to swap and con flag for backdraft. Dump some Chaos Bolts. We got a Decimation, we're definitely going to use that. Into another con flag for backdraft. Back into the single target rotation. Building, spending, using procs, as usual. Next Havoc window's coming up, so I'll go back and show that a little bit slower. So basically at this point, I'm getting high on shards. I'm gonna Kata right here. As I'm using Kata, I see I'm over 4. I'm getting really close to capping. So what I'm gonna do is just choose to use a Shadow Burn really quick before I Havoc, just to make sure I don't cap. And we're gonna go into our Havoc window. Like I said, make sure, don't be afraid to use your con flags liberally while Havoc's up. It'll gen you a lot of shards. And that is more or less how you would do Cleave as Destro. The only thing I forgot to mention again is similar to like single target. If these two targets are below 30% health, or like if even one of them is below 30% health, you definitely want to be using Shadow Burn as it becomes available, and you want to keep it recharging, similar to single target, or again, just like in a situation where you are either going to cap or you are moving and you don't have time to plant, you can just use Shadow Burn instead as your shard spender instead of Chaos Bolt. Alright guys, so now we can get into the AoE rotation. So I'll go over like the prio list and some of the more important concepts and differences compared to the single target rotation. So fundamentally, it's kind of the same concept. You're still going to be building and spending. There are a couple things that change though. The first thing is that your shard spender is going to shift predominantly from Chaos Bolt to Rain of Fire. There are sometimes you can still use Chaos Bolt in AoE, mostly if you are trying to prio down a high health target. You would want to use Chaos Bolt with Havoc up. Other than that, you are mostly going to be casting Rain of Fire in AoE, especially with Inferno. The second big thing that changes is Havoc is mostly going to be used as a shard gen tool versus trying to use this to spam as many Chaos Bolts as possible. Again, the only time you would want to spam Chaos Bolts during Havoc in like high target count situations is if you are trying to prio down a high health target. But other than that, like I said, Havoc is mostly just going to be used to gen shards instead. And the last like main concept to wrap your head around is that you want to try to use Immolate as your main shard gen filler over Incinerate. So what is the reason for that? The reason for that is in AoE you're going to have a lot more shards, so you need to use a lot more GCDs on spending shards. So while you're using GCDs to do other stuff, you're going to be having all these immolates on all these targets that are ticking. Each tick of immolate gives you one shard frag. So as you have immolate on more targets, you are generating more shard frags per tick, and each one of those ticks has a chance to generate additional shard frags if they crit. So essentially, while you're doing other stuff, Immolate is just passively generating a bunch of shard frags for you, which is great because what you don't want to do is just stand here in AoE and rely on hardcasting a bunch of incinerates that hit one target and do no AoE damage. What you want to be doing instead is just casting a bunch of Rain of Fires, using your Havocs to gen shards, using your Decimation procs, using your CDF, all that other good stuff. We're going to do an AoE demo right now. And then, as usual, I will go back after and explain in a little more detail kind of what's going on. All right, boys, so now I will go back through that demo I just did and kind of explain stuff in a little more detail. So to start out, basically, anytime you are running into a pack or your tank is pulling or whatever, you want to just start by getting some immolates out. You're doing this first so you can get immolate on stuff so that while you're doing other stuff, you will start genning shards while you're doing that other stuff. So we start with getting our immolates up so we can start passively genning some shards. Once I have immolate on everything, I'm going to Infernal, send my trinket. I'm going to use CDF immediately just to put it on cooldown. I'm going to throw up Havoc just to be able to start genning shards while I am Rain of Firing. And I'm mostly just going to be Rain of Firing. I used Conflag there just to get a charge of it on cooldown. Again, while I'm doing other stuff, it'll keep recharging. You don't have to worry about spacing these out that much at all, like you're not really worried about Roaring Blaze uptime in AoE. You're just using this for shard gen pretty much. And I'm just going to keep rain of firing. I'm starting to notice that my immolates are dropping, so I'm going to have to start going back and refreshing them soon, which I do right now. I use CDF when it comes up. It'll extend the timer on these a little bit, but I know I still have to refresh them pretty soon. Like right about now I start refreshing. I see my Havoc's up, so out of this I'm going to use Havoc just to gen more shards, and then I'm going to go back and spam more Rain of Fires. CDF when it comes up. I have Infernal Bolt, I can just use it now for some shards. Back into Rain. You guys will notice like I'm literally only spamming Incinerate when I have like nothing left to do. And what I mean by like nothing left to do is I have no procs available. My immolates all have good timers on them. I can't really immolate anything else. And like my Havoc's on cooldown. Like literally when I have nothing else to do, that's when I start using Incinerate. So whatever, we refresh our immolates, back into rain spam, CDF on cooldown, Havoc when it's up, back into rain spam, and it's kind of just rinse and repeat, you know? I'd say the hardest thing in AoE to learn how to do is just maintaining immolates on a lot of stuff. Outside of that, it's honestly very straightforward. You're just mostly spamming rain a lot. If for whatever reason you wanted to Chaos Bolt, you would just go, you would do like basically the Cleave rotation where you throw up Havoc, try to have some shards available, have some conflag charges available, and then you try to fit as many Chaos Bolts into that Havoc window as possible if you were trying to do prio damage. Alright guys, I think that is going to conclude the Destro guide. I think I covered most of the stuff. If there's anything you guys think I missed, or if you have any questions, as always, definitely let me know down in the comments, or just hop into my Discord server and feel free to ask me whenever. As I discussed in the video, a couple of the big points that I wanted to emphasize are if you want to have more success as Destro, you definitely need to maximize learning how to use Havoc properly, especially like in two-target cleave situations where you are trying to get the most damage out of cleaving your Chaos Bolt as possible. In AoE, definitely just learning how to keep your immolates up on more things and not cap shards. Capping shards is the absolute worst thing you can do in AoE. It's going to lose you a lot of damage, and if you consistently cap shards, all that's just going to snowball and lose you a lot of damage. And then on single target, it's kind of just the same thing, like don't cap shards, keep your conflag rolling, keep your debuffs on the target, your Roaring Blaze, your Eradication, your Immolate, and just use your build and spend playstyle as normal. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys found it helpful. I hope you guys maybe learned something. If you did enjoy the video, if you found it helpful, please make sure to subscribe for more content. We're going to be posting more Warlock content for War Within Season 1. Make sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment in the comment section. Again, I have YouTube memberships active now. I am going to go back through the membership tiers and maybe add some stuff in. But if you guys are interested in supporting the channel a little bit more, that would be a great way to do it. As well as just regular donations. I have been streaming on Twitch over on my Twitch channel. I'm going to be streaming a lot of M+. I was streaming normal and heroic raid this past week, and I'm definitely going to be streaming Mythic raid as Mythic raid comes out. So go stop by and hang out if you guys want to see that stuff. And other than that, I will see you all in the next video. So take it easy.